meeting to order. We need to establish the agenda. Just as a quick update, we're going to move the SIPs up front. And then we will follow it up by recognition and the regular route of the agenda. So with that, do I have a motion for the modified agenda? So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 And that's is 620. Director Jim is on the way. Director Tucker is online. The rest of us are in person in the administration building. And with that, I turn it over to Dr. Muzzle for our SIPs.
Great. At your last meeting, we had an opportunity to hear from Islander Middle School. And tonight we'll have the high school and each of our elementary schools. So we're going to begin with the high school tonight with their SIP. Typically, as we had noted, they typically go with IMS. But as they were working through and wanting to be inclusive with their staff, they had asked for a little extra time. So they're here tonight. So we're going to bring up acting principal Nick Lowell and our two associate principals, Lisa Dean, Erica Hill. So what we thought is we'll start with the high school tonight, and then I'm going to bring up Island Park and Lake Ridge, and then we'll bring up West Mercer and Northwood, just so that each of them have a little opportunity. Obviously, we have about an hour, so the challenge to this is there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into this, and the schools are incredibly proud of their work, so much so that they'd like an hour each. But I let them know that we should probably shorten it now, but anyway, pleased to present these. I've had the opportunity to work with each of the schools. And really, we've been working on thinking about moving from that, what are we just changing in terms of our adults, but what are really the outcomes? So if or when we do something, what can we expect from our students? And so with that, I'll turn it over to the high school.
Good evening. First, we wanted to express some gratitude for the support we've received over the past several months. As you all know, we've been down a team member, and so we've had a lot of different groups that have supported us along our SIP journey. And so we wanted to just start off by recognizing Learning Services, and in particular Jamie Prescott, who's been an incredible thought partner for us in the creation of our SIP and just our ongoing partnership with Learning Services. Our MIEA leadership, and of course Sally who's here tonight, but Michelle Hayes in particular, and Craig Mallory, who really partnered with our team in the support of staff and students. Our MIHS cabinet, who through some courageous conversations and other challenging moments, the team has really focused their efforts towards what's best for kids and left our meetings with the dignity intact of some folks and really get a chance to collaborate collectively with them. Our board reps, Andrew and Asha, we get a chance to meet with them weekly, and they've given some invaluable feedback each time that we meet. So really in their debt to get student voice in our work with the SIP. It really feels like we're a collective team with Learning Services, with our cabinet, with students, and with our MIEA leadership. So I just wanted to say thank you while we've been down a team member over the last several months. You'll see in our document, those of you that have already got a chance to check it out, we do have our SIP reflection of last year. As we tell our SIP story, we really were wanting to focus our initial efforts around our district improvement plan and how we how that work really resonated with us in the 4Bs, and especially how it captured the 4 fundamentals inside of them. We started discussing the 4Bs with our staff and surveying our students, and we were fortunate in the sense that our staff and our students really came back with 2 primary areas of focus: deepening our belonging on campus and removing barriers to student learning. And so we took that data back to our cabinet and asked an essential question, which is, why has the SIP not been a primary focus through our staff through several years? It's just not been a huge driving force for professional development for our staff and for their work in their classrooms. And one of the prevailing themes that came from them was they didn't see how it practically applied to learning in their classrooms. They really didn't. And so we started to dive deeper into that piece. And as we started to talk and discuss in our cabinet members, that belonging and barrier was still a part of our thought process. And what they shared was that students throughout time, as we're moving through COVID, really wanted to come early to class and stay late and build these authentic relationships. Our students were actually capturing this with our staff members, and they were kind of clamoring for that additional connection with our teachers. That was powerful for us to hear when we wanted to recognize what our students were saying to our staff members, and that came out of our cabinet work. So that's our SIP goal, is really about building a deep sense of belonging through creating authentic relationships with students. And really, that's our effort to remove barriers to students' perception and acceptance. And that's through the end of this year. We really feel that the acceptance and support piece and the building those relationships is the doorway to student learning. So up next, Lisa will discuss kind of our data points and how we'll be monitoring that progress throughout the year.
Thanks, Nick. Before I get started on our SIP story that our data is telling us, I just wanted to also give a huge shout out to Clay Lockery. He is our technology instructional coach. Giovanna Kosefsky. I didn't know Giovanna's last name. She's fantastic. And Monica Moline, she's our MIHS registrar. They really are the data team that I lean into just on a daily basis, but they really helped me gather the data, help us gather the data to tell the story. And I just wanted to say thank you for them. So as Nick mentioned, Fred just kind of really just hit a home run when he came in on the technology day, and he started talking with the staff about the 4 Bs. And several days had gone by and staff were still kind of talking. We heard people talking about belonging and barriers and so forth. And so we thought, well, gosh, really, what did they walk away with? We want to capture that. So as Nick said, we did a survey for our staff, and they really came back just with a very 2 strong top priorities. And that was around the belonging and removing a deep sense of belonging for students and staff, and removing barriers for students. And so kind of in the spirit of that 3rd B about broadcasting student voice, we wondered if what we're thinking and feeling in alignment with what our students are thinking and feeling. And so we decided to send out a survey to our students. And I will say that it was really kind of surprising for us in a wonderful way, but it was very powerful because we had close to 600 students respond, and we had about 250 students actually give comments around belonging barriers. And those are linked in our SIP. I don't know if you have time to read those, but it really, obviously, that it meant a lot to our kids. And so we really needed to think about that. And so as Nick said, we were kind of thinking, is this just because of COVID? What's going on here? And that really caused us to look at our EES data. That's really our long-term longitudinal data. And if you in our data set, we really looked at the supportive learning environment and also the sense of belonging that students are evaluated on, or they're quizzed on. And so you can just see that, like, over the course of the pandemic, for sure, we had some very large areas of slides there, negative slides. And we also had very low scores amongst our staff and the students around our equity practices. So that just kind of combined with our organic data and just what we were seeing with the EES, we really just felt that this is the area that we needed to move. And so we've got lots of tangible and actual items to address this goal, and Erica is going to speak to those.
Thank you. And I think you can sense that this SIP is one that really comes from the heart, and obviously comes from the heart from our staff and our students. So when we think about what does this look like for growth and learning and feeling safe to happen for our students, authentic and intentional relationships are key. So some areas that we're focusing on, we're looking at professional development, specifically around diversity, equity, and inclusion, really capturing how are we serving our underrepresented voices and students at Mershon High School, and leaning into doing this through courageous conversations in the classroom, bringing in Cultures Connecting with Dr. Caprice Collins and Gerard Brandt. They are doing some specific work around courageous conversations with our staff. Our Black Student Union, our Student Voices for Change, a number of our other student groups have come and shared so far at our staff meetings about some of their specific experiences at North Carolina High School, as well as what we can be doing as a staff to better support all of our students. We watched an incredible documentary as a staff called Race to Be Human, and we'll be watching this as well with our students and unpacking with courageous conversations some of the messages that are coming out of that film. We also, our Black Student Union has created a curriculum repository which focuses on culture responsive lens and has been a great resource for our staff that we'll continue to keep building on. Our Black Student Union also has done a documentary that will be showing to staff and to our students around their own experiences at Mercer Island High School and some of the microaggressions that have been experienced at the high school and kind of what we can continue to do to be upstanders within our school, all of us. And so our big focus in this relationship building is making sure that our underrepresented voices at Mercer Island High School are heard, seen, and valued, and that all of us at Mercer Island High School are part of the community. So a big piece of this work that we're doing is also through our instructional coaches team, and we have an amazing group of instructional coaches that are working with our staff on building these authentic relationships and going through classrooms and making that focus of what do these intentional authentic relationships look like. This instructional coaches team initiated November as a learning walk month and challenges within each department of trying to get in as many learning walks as possible, which has been deeply valuable. So we are excited about the direction that we're going, and we recognize that a lot of this is qualitative data. Now Lisa's going to be able to kind of talk a little bit about how we can see what we're doing here with these authentic and intentional relationships coming through in a quantitative lens.
So we just wanted to make sure that through all of this, incredible work that we're doing with our PDs, through our different committees and our student groups and so forth, that we are still collecting data. So like, what is the impact? How is this shifting our experience and our outcomes for kids? So we're gonna, be looking at some of our traditional tools that we've had, homeroom, Skyward, EES, grades, attendance. We have our CARES team data, which we have talked about in the past. We're still doing that weekly. We also just have some new tools this year that we really want to, just kind of like we got our organic data to help inform the writing of our SIP. We really want to be taking just kind of these micro measurements after we're having these PDs, when we're doing these learning walks, we're having the students come and talk with the staff about their learning experiences and things that are benefiting them. What's the impact of that? So we'll be doing our own surveys after each of those and be monitoring our progress along the way.
Now we want to invite you, if you have any questions.
So yeah, and looking at the curriculum and thinking about it, I mean, a few things like strike me as the crown jewels, like radio broadcast. It's a program that we have that's different, that's unique. I have a niece that goes to Newport High School. I don't think they have anything similar. In the 1 year that I've been on the board, there's been a number of accolades that students in that program have received. We also hear a lot about broadcasting, quite literally, student voice. We have a few stories about the experience of, first generation Asian Americans and that their parents went through, whether it was high boat refugees or some of the rivalries between Pakistan and India when it comes to cricket. What, in thinking of the curriculum, are crown jewels that we should be leaning into? And then what are perhaps crown jewels that other districts may offer that we don't, that we could be looking to adopt?
I would say if you were gonna categorize our radio program as one of our crown jewels, I think what the root and basis of that crown jewel is around relationships, which we're talking about today. And so the other programs that thrive inside of that space, so I'm sure Andrew can speak to this as well. Joe thrives in that space, but Asha is a part of our journalism program, and those relationships, again, another crown jewel that we get a chance to support. Those are deeply embedded in relationships, and that learning gets to further because that student who's in that space gets a chance to be vulnerable, expressing themselves in a very thoughtful way. And so I think those two programs in particular really bring out student voice. As far as other crown jewels and other schools and school districts, yeah, I'm not quite sure. I'd love to be able to answer that. We're modeling something after another school or another school district. I'll say I'm really proud of our current programs and the ones that we're having at the high school right now. I think that we've been the model for other schools to try and follow. So we see that we have advanced, and we have engineering, we have computer science, we have all these other classes that are new to us that other schools are not providing. So and we're using our model classes of a radio, a journalism, some of our, our band program and things like that that are focused on both curricular and relationships because our students want to go back in droves to attend those classes.
I would just say really quickly too, that I think we could have a student from each department in the high school share how they believe that department is a crown jewel. I think that that's one of the beautiful things about National High School is that really everything is at that level.
Yeah, if you were to see the students and the energy at Crest today and the work around a social studies project that they were doing, the energy and fun that those students were having as they engage with one another, those students at Crest would tell you, actually, it's that social studies class right there because it was vibrant, it was robust, it was rigorous, yet engaging and fun because of the relationships that were forged.
In January, we'll bring forward, Superintendent Wold and I were just meeting before this meeting tonight. Sorry. Quick promotion. We were talking about in January, we'll bring forward many of the new classes. One of those is a marine science class. One of them is going to be a social studies class around human impact on climate. And so I think those, especially our social studies piece, what are we missing? A real entry point for social studies in the freshman year. We've had one course, but it hasn't brought a lot of students into that. I think we've been missing video production, which started this year. It's just a 0.2 right now, but that has been a hole that I know we've been trying to fill for a number of years. On the STEM side, our robotics and computer science classes, I was just talking to our computer science teacher earlier this semester around what are some ways that we can continue to grow that and push on some of those. So there's some untapped things too, but we've got a lot of wonderful things going on.
Yeah.
And I do believe that, the teachers and the relationships of our staff with the students are what really draw them in. I'm thinking about Mr. Twombly and Mr. Bryant for the two of you, but perhaps the two of you have ideas or thoughts too.
I think Mr. Wold really touched on that relationship piece is really important. As he said, I think that when you have a teacher that cares about you, you're going to, as a student, take a further step in learning and really try to work with that teacher as a mentor and really push your learning more than just having it be sort of just another teacher. It turns from, I have to do that assignment, which we sort of talk about. How do we get in the middle school term from 3 to a 4? Well, that teacher is going to push you to that 4 or to that next level of understanding. So that teacher that you have is going to really push you to do assignments greater than you thought you could, not because you have to, but because that teacher is really inspiring you and you're inspiring yourself by the teacher's teaching to do great. So I think that the teacher relationship with students can be so powerful, and I just don't think that is really, you can't measure it in data enough, but that real spark that teachers can give to students is really impactful.
Dan, one more comment. I appreciate Fred bringing up your class bill come in front of the board in January. There was one that was really unique when Eric and I were processing some of this stuff that we hadn't heard of it, but it was something that was nationally done in other states. I think the state that they're modeling after is Minnesota. It's multi-age teaching. And so this course that's going to be coming forward from our band directors, Parker Bixby and Kyle Thompson, really had great energy coming out of our cabinet to think about teacher preparatory work. So many people are going different avenues with their career choices. And so this class will have students teaching and doing some great work in that way with our multi-ages throughout our district. So that'll come in front of the board as well in January. Be powerful work.
Okay, any questions?
I'm still on the freeway right now.
Maggie Todd?
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's exciting to hear about what's going on at the high school. And I love the idea of some of these new classes coming in, kind of like those demonstration sports that they have in the Olympics, you know, where like they first brought in snowboarding and they just tried it out for a few years and it was very popular. And so I hope that these courses have the same kind of momentum. So thanks for everything you're doing.
Deborah?
Starting off with a comment that's going to lead into a question. So there was a high school PAC meeting this morning and it was talking about how we're talking about Islander Hour and how to encourage students to actually go and what they should be getting out of it versus what they are getting out of it and finding ways to help them connect. And to me, I actually reviewed this after the PAC meeting. So I didn't see the connection then, but now in terms of, the engagement when our students feel a sense of belonging and when they're sitting around with students that are like them and interests like them, not necessarily just their friend group, but similar interests, and realizing that there's more people out there that are like them that are different from them, I think is really powerful. And I love what you were saying about, looking at different ways to group students in Islander Hour, because I can tell you in my house, we've heard a lot less complaining about Islander Hour since someone got pulled into the leadership group. And so there's that sense of belonging and getting to know students that you wouldn't necessarily see in other ways. And, whether it's fine arts or robotics or, athletics, or there's so many different things. And then using that time also in how you were talking about planning time and, in terms of they can really start to get involved and plan together because of their crazy schedule. So to me, that ties in directly with belonging. And then also, we all know that that is such a barrier to learning is the lack of feeling like they belong. So, they're all tied together. My question is, and I don't, I think the statistics kind of bear this out, that students are feeling less connected to the staff. And I don't know if it's staff to each other as well. How can you, what are you working on in terms of helping to support the staff-student relationships?
Well, first of all, I appreciate you spending time with us in the PAC this morning. And when you got a chance to leave, we got a chance to go further into our data sets and they got a chance to ask some thoughtful questions. And we went further into our data sets so that they could say, this is not really a fluffy kind of goal. It's actually deep rooted in data for them to really circle back to relationships as the doorway into their learning. I'll say our cabinets, when we had this conversation about authentic relationships and what that would look like for them, they asked that it wasn't so prescribed, that there was an emphasis and focus, and they got time. It's time to do it how they build this best with their classes. So one staff member asked, well, Nick, I don't want you to tell me specifically how I build a relationship with a kid. I want you to say, can we do this with our time? Can I allocate more time to this? Can I dedicate it instead of saying, I have to push in this way, that I actually am hearing my administrator say, Nick, or staff members, teacher X, take that extra 10 minutes going off into the break to talk to students about where they're going, what they're doing, what kind of support do they need best when they're going off to a longer break, what are their plans, how they'll, is there travel, just allocating time was what our staff members asked for, that space to be able to do those relationships naturally and how their personality sees fit. I will say what Erica referenced earlier with our instructional learning walks, what they're trying to do, they've actually taken our 4Bs and built a note-taking guide. So as they go and learn, they're seeing exemplars for staff members that are crushing it, staff members that are just really thriving and building these relationships that we referred to earlier with Andrew and Asha and the classes that they've taken. So as these instructional walks happen, they get a chance to take some of those beautiful moments that they see and then share it with others. And there'll be some opportunities in our professional development plans for them to share out and say, who's really doing this well? What is a new and creative technique that they're doing that really puts the students first? And that, of course, opens that doorway for higher level learning.
I'll just say the very last, I'm so sorry, the very last slide of the deck, the students are like, you guys are all doing this adulty stuff and you're looking at this data and you're having all these meetings, but like, these are some tangible things that you could do right now. And one of the things that they asked for was like, just some icebreakers in the class, because a lot of times students go in and they just go right into the learning and they're asking like, we don't really know each other. So, one of the things that a next step maybe we meet monthly with our cabinet, that would be to, have a repository that we're building for equity. Should we do something like that for just like a 3 to 5 minute icebreaker? Do they need that kind of support? Would that be helpful for teachers? But our kids are saying, we want to talk to each other and get to know each other in a deep way. So, yeah, those are things that's the exciting work ahead of us.
Well, drawn on that last slide, Lisa, as I click forward, and you guys will get a chance to look at this too. That last slide, one of those pieces, if making these relationships, I'm strong in my content area, but relationships might be something that I need to grow and work on as an educator. One of the ones that I pulled out in that last slide talks about flexibility. I might be great in my content area, but connecting with a 15-year-old kid might not be my jam. Well, maybe that flexibility piece inside of that last slide that students are saying some suggested outcomes of these relationships. It could be more flexibility and understanding from adults in the school. Maybe it's just saying, hey, we get it, that your life is complex as a 16, 17-year-old student. So you do have some additional flexibility, both in how you are assessed in your learning and giving kind of a UDL approach in that learning, giving multiple options in that way, or maybe it's just giving an extra day.
I thought that on the professional development day, and you kind of tapped around this in October, that even opening up with students from the Black Student Union, as you had said, who just came and talked to the staff. What is it like to be a Black African American on Mercer Island, in Mercer Island High School? What's that experience like? Even that, to open up relationships that way, I thought was another really powerful opportunity I had to be able to be in that space with yourself.
Yeah.
I thought was gathered.
We got a new superintendent while you were on.
Teachers, I look up for a second, so I really appreciate this, and I hear that you're saying that this is some qualitative data. And I'm wondering, as we're digging through the data, if the 4Bs are awesome, and if we're breaking these data out by race. And so, because if we're tracking, right, it would be important to be very intentional about which group feels like belong and which don't. And I feel like belonging is also a very big term. And how do we start to break it down to quantify them? So because then you can see exactly what does it mean for students. And I read through all the students' evaluation or feedback, and they're really telling us what they want. And they're very explicit, like the last one you say, help students relationship through class icebreakers. Those are very intentional things that we can tell our staff and our teachers to, like, 5 minutes, don't do these kind of things. So these are kind of things I really like to see, versus just kind of be out there and make sure that this is an open environment. And ultimately, I think when we're things are pros and cons. So today was Greece Day, apparently in high school. And so my son, came to me and said, Mom, can you grease my hair? I'm like, why? And he's like, it was greased in. He was wearing the red and black shirt. I'm like, this is not grease, you know? But so like the spirit day, you know, and he's like, and he might be in the spirit hall of shame. I don't know. Just
Real
yeah. But part of that, I'm just thinking like culturally, I have nothing that is grease-like in my household. And the only thing that could be greasy for Sebastian was his hair, right? But part of like, so really break it down again, what does it mean to belong like different culture? Because even though we do something that's super awesome, like it's very motivating for him to dress up, you know, but we kind of don't hit the mark because that's not normal in our culture. But another on the flip side, a sense of belonging was that I'm gonna call out, I think Mr. Swanson.
Yeah.
Allowed him to bring his rice cooker to school to cook rice. And I'm like, you must feel like you belong in school so much that you feel so comfortable
So good. Yeah.
to bring something that's so intimate, that's part of us to school. So I feel like that is when the school create this sense of where the students feel like they can bring themselves. Because we're all like, what are you doing? But I'm just like, that is really what belonging is. And so I wonder if we can really think about how do we, instead of just like class starts at this time and we're gonna start class, but really create an environment, especially on Mercer Island, when you talk about distinction. I think that is really Mercer Island's distinction, is really our community and our closeness to learn that in this really intimate community kind of way where people interact, students can interact with each other, students can interact with staff, students can interact with their administrators, superintendents. I think that is really our distinction that we have, maybe other bigger schools don't have, and I think we should lean into that.
Tim, I appreciate you bringing that piece up, and I think if you look throughout our data set, you'll see many of these pieces that we're diving deep into that data. On slide 12, you'll see that we're taking a look at demographics, and actually this one is from 21-22, and it's broken down based on students and how they performed in their classes over last year. And we highlighted something in red that it's not just from 21-22. Actually, we looked further back years and years and years at our students who are Black and African American that are more likely to fail a class. When they enter a class, and based on the color of their skin and the student next to them, that based on their demographic, they're already at a disadvantage. They're already more likely to fail and maybe least likely to get an A. We're diving deep into that. That matters. That data matters. And it's not going to be that way anymore in our high school. Absolutely not. We're going to continue to work at this. We're going to be on it. We're looking at gender. We're looking at, if you take a look at our gender and our female students taking STEM classes, we have data that will show pieces that there's huge disparities inside of some of our STEM classes within gender. You'll see later on in our slide deck that we'll have students who receive special services, that they're not taking honors and AP courses. We want to say barriers and access to higher level learning. They're not taking those classes. In fact, to the point where we couldn't even make a pie graph. It had to be a bar graph because of how little of students were taking it in of these upper level courses. That stops now. That cannot be our process. You're asking about demographic, all of these different factors for us. We have to eradicate these systemic problems inside of our school, and our team and our collective team with our student leaders, with our MIEA leadership, we're actively going to be working on this work. And it starts again with that doorway into learning of a student feeling safe to take that step, to take that challenge. Andrew mentioned it in his message. That student has to have the ability to have an educator who's got their back, and they don't feel like they're at a disadvantage because of their color of their skin.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks for all your work.
Thank you. One real quick comment. I know we have to move on. I appreciate the work you're doing. It makes a lot of sense. I know, like in the real world, and even as adults, we often have to collaborate. And I know a lot of projects in school are all around collaboration, people working in teams. If you don't feel like you belong in the team, if you don't feel like you can trust other people on your team, if you don't feel like you can share problems as well as successes with other people on your team, you won't succeed. And I know lots and lots of adults have these touch points, these check-ins to remind each other that we are human, we have problems on a day-to-day basis, and then we quickly turn back to the work and get our work done and be successful at it. So I appreciate you trying to walk that balance between academics and how connectivity and networking benefits academics. So thank you very much.
Thank you, high school team. We'll bring Lake Ridge and Island Park. Andrews, do you want to shift so they can drive, or do you want to be driving? You got it, okay. Thank you. All right, so, you want to, are you pulling up Island Park first or Lake Ridge? I don't want it. Great.
Yeah, you want to hear a reflection.
They belong on
Yes, you are. I'm a senior in years of on planet.
Yeah.
Well, good evening. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me. This is my first opportunity to sit in front of you and talk about Island Park as the leader of the school. So it's a real pleasure, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Just to touch quickly on our reflection from last year. In conversations with Superintendent Rundle, obviously I wasn't here. I wasn't in a position to monitor or implement the SIP as written. However, I did include in the reflection some data that came out of the academic side of the work around math goals last year. And that data was encouraging in terms of growth and meeting exceeding standards in identified common core domains. The goal last year with regards to SEL was focused in on students feeling challenged, and the data that came out of a student survey showed that there was a modest increase in terms of the number of students that understood what being challenged was or felt challenged at school. When approaching the SIP for this school year, we decided to pivot away from that goal because there was some really clear data in the EDS survey from spring of last year that was connected into the district-wide goal of belonging. And I've included a couple of screenshots of that data in the SIP, and particularly around that idea of feeling like students felt like they belonged to a group of friends, or that they had adults in the building that they could go to, or that they trusted. We saw decreases of 22% of students feeling safe at our school, and 21% decrease in the percentage of our students who felt proud to be an Island Park Eagle. And so that data really jumped out to us. And in conversations, you know, there's a lot of suppositions or what ifs. Is it because of COVID? Is it because of, you know, just the way the world over the last years, even as we've come out of the kind of depths of the pandemic. And one of the things that we are really focused on this year is creating the sense not only of classroom communities and communities in our classrooms, which our teachers are amazing at doing. An incredible job of creating communities within their classrooms, and they're masters at that. And those are places where kids feel safe. One of the things that has been missing over the last couple of years due to the pandemic is a school-wide community connection. Simple things as like having buddy classes. That used to be a staple at our school. It's been a staple at every school that I've been at. And the power of older students sitting alongside younger students in a mentor role. And of course, the little ones look up to the big kids, right? And that's, you know, I can see them on the playground and wave because I've got a buddy who's in 5th grade and I may be in 2nd grade. So to start to reconnect kids with each other across grade levels is a really important part of the work we're going to be doing. We're going to be establishing buddy weeks. We'll be talking about this staff next week. And also looking at school-wide connectivity issues, for example, upcoming prior to the winter break, a school-wide display of how I as an individual bring light to the Island Park community. And so that's a lot of our focus around our SEL goals. Our systems that we have in place, our student success team, our response intervention team, our PBIS team, working together to analyze data, where are we seeing that we have opportunities to grow? And what are, we've got very creative minds in Island Park on how we can create ways to bring our school community together with the hope that these numbers will see an increase. So that's kind of our focus for our inclusion and our belonging goal. And our hope is that we will see students identify that they feel safe at our school, that they're proud to be an Island Park Eagle, and that they're connected with their peers and they're connected with the staff at our school. Our academic goal is individualized for each grade level based on data collected at beginning of year assessments. And then you can see the data that is in the SIP. Our teachers analyze the data, identify the domain or specific standard based on that data, and we will be utilizing in our grades 3 through 5 our new iReady math curriculum, which there's been a lot of learning, not only about the curriculum itself, but the intricacies of the assessment portions of it, and we're continuing to learn more. And our teachers will be monitoring and have been monitoring student growth related to the school improvement goal, but even more importantly, doing it daily and weekly in terms of the lessons and sessions that are being taught in math. So that's what I have.
Oh, wow.
I was told 5 minutes.
All right, all right. Figuring out, starting the clock right here. All right, well, good evening, everybody. And in the spirit of opening with gratitude as the high school set up, I wanted to express some or thank any veterans we have in the audience today. We at Lakeridge had our Veterans Day Assembly, our annual Veterans Day Assembly this morning, which was amazing and wonderful. And it always brings a little bit of a tear to my eye to hear all of the kids singing all those patriotic songs with their grandparents and family members displayed at the front of the building. So I wanted to thank all the veterans that are perhaps in the room or in the audience. And I also wanted to thank the school board for visiting Lakeridge last month. It doesn't feel like that long ago, but I think it was last month. Thank you for coming down, and I'll try to keep this short because I think Lakeridge has already highlighted the work that we're going to be doing and have been doing related to our school improvement plan through that visit. So in short, we last year wrote kind of a multi-year theory of action for our Lakeridge School Improvement Plan that aimed to weave together social emotional best practices and academic best practices. So the short version of that long theory of action is if we weave together social, emotional, and academic best practices, our assumption is that we will be increasing student cognitive and emotional engagement with their learning, which will lead then to improve student outcomes. So how are we going to do this at Lakeridge? And so I just draw your attention to the 4-year action plan that Andres already has up there, and it spells it all out. So I'm going to just highlight 2 kind of priority threads I hope you'll notice running through the entire document. The first one is student engagement. We're really working hard on authentically increasing student engagement and student ownership of their learning. And, just as regarding increasing belonging, we know that students feeling like they have some agency in their learning and in their school experience increases their senses of self-esteem and belonging to an environment. If you think of kind of trying to climb those last 3 levels of Maslow's hierarchy towards self-actualization, it's a pretty important priority to have to get them owning their own learning and increasing student engagement. And with that, so our focus is last year and this year, and including the next couple of years, is to provide our students with multiple opportunities to take that ownership of their learning through student-led student growth cycles in their classrooms. So last year, we really focused on providing every student clear learning targets for every lesson.
And then an aligned common assessment or informal formative assessment. And then opportunities to reflect on their learning. And then this year we're adding, using that reflection and that data that's collected through that process to set their own learning goals. And then monitor their progress towards those learning goals and be able to speak about that. Even in kindergarten, speak about their learning and their progress and their achievement with either peers or their teachers or their parents. We have several of our grade levels this year that are doing student-led conferencing, and they're developing student data notebooks in order to do that. So, and then we'll be emphasizing the student engagement mindsets, routines and practices with our new curriculum adoptions, and then continuing to work on removing barriers to access and opportunities. So that's the universal design learning. The second big priority that you'll see running throughout there is, again, monitoring student growth. So to ensure growth for every learner or guaranteeing at least 1 year's growth. How are we going to do that? So we'll continue to closely progress monitor students who are below or approaching grade level standards. We've got a lot of monitors already in place to monitor that growth. So we're really going to be focusing a lot more of our work on defining adequate growth for our at and above grade level learners, because oftentimes that's a little harder to investigate. We don't have a lot of tools that flag students who are already coming into our classrooms at or above grade level. And so we're going to really work hard on defining that, finding it, and then monitoring it to ensure that every single one of our students is meeting their growth potential. And then last, we'll be focusing on learning all of our new diagnostic and assessment tools from our new curriculum adoptions, and then continuing our use of AIMSweb letters and classroom-based assessment. So we're gonna make it.
Yeah, so I thank you very much for the presentations, and I like the data, early on with the data that is reflected the iReady software, and appreciated the link to the couple-minute video that sort of explained how the levels work. It strikes me that there's at least two things that's emphasized a lot in the iReady software. One is growth, like how much is learned in a year, and also level. The one thing that's not talked about as much in the presentation, I'm not sure if this is captured, but is also uptake rate. You know, how quickly a concept clicks for certain kids. It could be that you're above level, your growth is doing well, but you're still bored because the concepts like click very quickly. And what's appropriate is 2 years worth of growth at one level just to keep a student engaged. And so I'm not sure if the tools are there right now in iReady, but at least to me, in sort of thinking about sort of the large sort of forces at play, it sort of stood out as an omission that it wasn't talking about how quickly does it take for a kid to get a concept.
Right.
And
Well, I think that's what we need to define, right? And because we don't have tools or understanding about kind of that pacing and how does that affect. That's why we very intentionally moved away from calling it 1 year's growth, so that we can look at it in just a new way. Did you make the growth that your potential says that you should be making? At whatever pace, and it is super hard to pull out. And I do think that some of the iReady tools might give us that, because they have the My Path, which is, I understand it, but it's driven by the student performance, individual student performance.
Can I interrupt? So I had this conversation with one of my grade level teams today about that very topic. That there are students who perhaps on the pre-assessment or beginning of the year assessment came in at a score that might have been right at whatever the cut line was to, as it's an adaptive assessment to progress it on this path versus this path. And their expressed frustration of, I need to recalibrate this student so that we can change that path. So we have actually had the conversation today. We have been told that next year we will be able to do it, but we have actually put a pitch in to perhaps have that opportunity to do it this year.
Okay, great. Yeah, it seems like, I mean, just basically exposure to questions, right? If you, a student is given, you know, minimal exposure and then grasp the concept, then they're ready to move on.
Right.
Whereas if it's like this, they might repeated exposure, right?
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, I really appreciate your thinking really hard and having this 4-year action plan. It's and I love the way you organize things. It's really easy to follow and see the intention of your strategy. I'm really excited about that. Thank you for the part. And then John, I really would like, as I'm thinking again of your distinction, like what it was make us special, and I appreciate that that you're saying you're creating community in the classroom. That's really, you know, I haven't heard that. I love that, creating community in the classroom. And then how that you're creating community within your school, right? So it's very intentional. Then I think about how in the district, like band night, right? We have community within the school district. And then how then, you know, when you're talking about your veterans activities, right? We're really building community within our Mercer Island community. And so as we're framing kind of how do we do belonging and how do we do connectivity, it is like this really kind of outward thing that we're doing. So I think we're doing all these things really awesome, right? But then just like being able to communicate how where we're at and what we're able to do, I think that's really powerful. And so, yeah, so when you were talking, made me think about like all these little things that you're doing, and I appreciate the intentionality of building more community within your school itself.
Well, I'll give you another example just from the staff, some staff actions. We have a new instructional coach at our school who brings a big personality and things that he's board, right? As put a board of staff members of pictures of them when they were in elementary. And then there's another board of staff members' pets. And just the number of times that you will walk by and there are kids that are just staring at this, right? They're connecting, they're making a connection with the adult in their building. It's a simple move, but it's something that's impactful. It's to feel they have a connection with the big people in the building.
I love that. I'm gonna steal that. I think that's how you match the pets to the people.
Yeah, I wanted to just build on what Tam was saying. I think that building of community at the elementary school level is so important for kids, not just because they need that support and they need that relationship building and kind of community to belong to because of their age, but because it's their first experience in our school system, and they go on from elementary school to the middle school to the high school where they won't have as much direct support. But if we're teaching them how to connect with others and how, you know, like how to help each other and build that community, that's fantastic. And I love seeing it happen between grades. Like I will say that my daughter had a big buddy when she was in kindergarten, and she still talks about the project that buddy worked on with her, like, and remembers everything about it and everything about that kid. It had a huge impact on her. So I'm really happy to see that come back. I did want to ask, just in terms of belonging, as has been talked about repeatedly tonight, whether I know a lot about what's happening at the high school and the middle school in terms of equity work, but are there equity teams in place at the elementary school right now? And if not, then who's kind of focusing on that? Who's doing that kind of work?
Every building does have a site-based equity team that is, and you'll see on the last line of my 4-year action plan, I did call out our equity work over the last 4 years, and every one of the other buildings does have teams dedicated to kind of promoting and moving the equity work forward.
And that's teachers
Yeah.
and administrators. Are there parents on that as well, or?
We do have parents, and we have students on it, and this year, and of course, teachers and administrators as well. And I believe the other buildings have some format.
And I will say at Island Park, we have not yet gotten that started, but had a conversations this morning with Dr. Rundle about that, and have had conversations with staff members. And that is a focus for us to get the team up and running and focusing on a lot of the good work that has happened at Island Park. That we shared with you recently for the last school year, so that's definitely an emphasis for us.
And some of our schools have had one in place and then transition more into a more ubiquitous view of the equity team, and that it's not a specific team. They moved on to more of how is it part of all of their different teams. So there's been different approaches to that, but it is very much a lens with which we're trying to continue to look through all of our decision, not just the hard textbooks or whatnot, but even our actions. How are we grouping students? How are we disciplining students, and what does that look like? So.
Thank you.
Give her.
I'm gonna make this brief, I think, in the interest of time, but thank you. I loved. I appreciate the focus on the social emotional learning and that helping create our young littles into real people finding a sense of themselves. And I don't think there's a better place that can happen than at each one of these schools. Like what I think it was Eric who said about you know, the high school and each person says whatever they're involved in is the best part of the high school. What I love about Mercer Island is every family says that their school is the best elementary school, and there isn't a better way for that. I mean, that couldn't be a better thing. So, to me, that's not book learning. That's, you know, we want our kids to grow up and be successful and to advocate for themselves. And I'm seeing it here in terms of their own conferences, to let people know what their needs are and to learn how to get along with others. Book learning, that's going to come with time. And I don't know, I know there's other people that are very focused on test scores. I'm not one of them because I think that comes with time and we each find our strengths in different places. So I appreciate very much that the continued effort to make sure that kind of the school community is very much addressed in the set.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate the connection between social emotional learning and academics and the value it brings to both sides. So I thank you very much. Do we want to move to the next group?
Let's go to let's go ahead and do the elementaries. I know we're not gonna do till 6, so we still have students coming in for that. Okay.
All right.
So our last two are principals from Northwood and West Mercer, Megan Isaacson and Julie Newcomer. Give you a chance to share your tips. And I know we've done some work. If you want to build off what the high school was saying with any data conversations we've been having. I hope you're seeing about that.
Yeah, we're following everybody, so I feel like the most of like the alignment has been shared in so many ways, but I'll kind of give a quick synopsis, I guess, and then hand it to you and try to tie some pieces together, make it a little bit more conversational. But hello, everyone. Nice to see you here in person. I'm getting over a little illness, so I'm still wearing this, and this is the life we're living with the germs. But I feel like I'm here tonight kind of as the conduit that brings the SIP story, but really behind me is our entire staff and students and families who contributed their feedback to this. So I almost feel like I'm here, I am here on behalf of them, you know. We could have all those people in this room, that'd be great, but this is a collective story. And it's a long-term story. I came in last year and we started fresh and we hit the play and we didn't stop. We're grinding and we're in the second year of our 3-year plan. And I literally at the last day of school last year had an image to our staff that was a little play and pause button and said, all right, we're pressing pause, go off, have your summer, have your vacation, please relax. But when we come back, in late August, the play button's going again and we're hitting the ground. And that's really what we've done. We've really picked up a lot where we left off last year. Our social emotional learning goals stemmed out of the EES survey given in, or a version of it that we created in fall 2021 that really had all the categories that you see in the EES, which is incredible data. But we pulled from there 3 primary components that were really standing out as needs for our community, which were student safety, problem solving, and sense of belonging. And through those pieces, we've continued to build how we're addressing them and also refine how we're understanding what students are feeling and thinking about them.
through focus groups, through ongoing survey data, through work in the classrooms and our community circles. But these three core components are the focused areas for our social emotional learning goal, and the teams that are putting together our primary thing this year is our community circles in the classroom. How are we building community? How are we addressing problems and solving those through impact and restoration and repair conversations? And we have a team that went to a conference this summer and has been training us all up. So it's really a huge new move to continue to make sure that all of our kids feel that way. And you'll see written in our goal, it says 100%, because we're not going to our school saying not all of our kids are going to feel a sense of belonging. So this is why, you know, we didn't want to compromise that. All of our kids should deserve and to feel that way and feel success when they're at our school. So that's our ultimate. And then let's see, kind of went through that one pretty quick, but the second piece is our academic goal. Again, second year of a third-year plan. We've revised a little bit of that goal with feedback from our community, from our staff, to really make sure we were getting support for all students. So all students make growth. Students who are not yet at grade level need to make more than 1 year growth. That's a gap closing goal. That's really targeting needs that they have foundationally to push up. And then students at or above is demonstrating more depth of understanding and or extending to standards connected at the next grade level. We've had the same conversation Heidi's having around what does that mean to have more depth and breadth of understanding using the tools that we have. And we've been working with our one of our instructional coaches on building an access framework that takes every single standard in mathematics and looks at what is the beginning, approaching, meeting, and exceeding version of that. So if you have a student who's already meeting, coming in at standard in operations and algebraic thinking, they're in fourth grade, here's the meeting standard. What does exceeding look like based on that rubric, and how can we push in that direction? So that success criteria has been built, and we're really working across our grades and PLCs to try to see where those connections lie across standards. A huge piece of our academic goal this year is a targeted small group instruction block called Wolfpack. It's built into our schedule every day, where students have a 25-minute period where that whole grade level has small group targeted instruction with flooded para support. So there's multiple groups going on that are at grade level based on their formative data around our SIP goal. And so you'll see 10 o'clock, fourth grade Wolfpack or whatnot, everyone's in their small groups in different classes. The pairs have them in hallways, breakout rooms everywhere, and they're targeted instruction, and it's cross grade level, cross classes. So not only is it academic support, but it's building community, it's sharing a connection between students in other rooms. And it's been phenomenal to see that first cycle, that cycle of inquiry going through it. I will say when I brought this to our staff in August at our leadership team, I said, don't worry, y'all. I know this is a big lift, but also let's go through this cycle of inquiry and see, be okay to make, take risks, make some mistakes, build on slowly. And when we go through that, we start to see the impact. That's when you know this works. And I had our fifth grade teachers come to me after their first cycle with their Wolfpack block and say, listen, we took our assessment for this unit. Every single one of our kids passed, with the exception of 3. We did reteaching in our Wolfpack block with that group. All of our kids have passed that unit. And they said this is because we have that targeted small group time that's so intentional, all the support pushed in. So that's a huge part about where we're focusing on those core domains this year in our academic piece. I've talked a lot. I'm going to pass it over to you, Northwood. Wow, I'm excited for you. That was really I love your enthusiasm. Thanks. I have an espresso. So I'll be online. I kind of feel like a little sister in this crew because I started about 4 months ago, and I think what I really appreciate coming into Northwood was the amazing sort of thought processes and procedures that were already in place. And so ABG is not here, but I want to appreciate kind of the work she did pre me to come into this and do. So
I was very intentional when I came into this work after COVID that I was gonna prioritize three things, because I tend to want to boil the ocean. And so I wanted to really be mindful in that. And so my three sort of main core values were access, equity, and joy. Because after COVID, we had seen a real sort of a tanking in just the fun in education and the joy, just, you know, in our everyday jobs. So that's kind of where I started. And then my amazing staff, sort of just went, all right, we're with you. And they just sort of jumped both feet with me. So we kind of made goals. We really wanted to give students voice. I feel like we don't ask our elementary students their thoughts very often. And it turns out when you ask them, they have really good answers. So we also looked at our EES data, and the things that really emerged were in class, we often work with other students to solve or do a problem or task, and then setbacks and discouragement, which for me are two really valuable life skills. And it built on the connection really that we've been talking a lot about in the community building as we're working together to solve problems. And I find as an adult, now managing adults, that issues arise when we aren't working together to solve a problem or a task, and when we get setbacks and we can't persevere through them. So for me, this felt like, oh yes, we can focus on this in elementary school because this is going to serve them for the rest of their lives. So I also did this thing being the new and energetic person who drinks a lot of caffeine, and the teachers came to me with their first set of academic goals, and I sort of did this. Here, try again. Because I was like, we tend to serve the middle group, but there are kids at both ends of that spectrum who really deserve intention. And now we have especially a math tool that can measure growth with our children who are already at or above standard, and I want to take advantage of that. So they took that and they ran back and they were like, okay, we'll do it again. And they came back with goals that really focus on all of the kids, and all to me is 100%. We don't ignore anybody, and if they come in knowing stuff, then we're going to teach them more things, and we're going to help them become their knowledge to be, you know, spread wider and go deeper. And I'm really passionate about that. I don't want students in Northwood to be bored out of their gourd. I just don't. And so that to me was part of the goal making process, and that's kind of where we went. And then I also said, oh you guys, I'm your worst nightmare. I said, make big lofty goals. And maybe we're not gonna get there, but I would rather have a big lofty goal that we kind of almost get there, as opposed to just a goal that we know we can attain. And again, they jumped on board. My staff is amazing, and they were like, we're on it. And already we've had conversations about how are we gonna assess our kids who are nonverbal? How are we gonna assess our kids who already know this? How are we gonna, you know, and it's the conversations are bringing me so much joy, because I'm like, they're being creative and they're stretching and are challenging kiddos or causing us to have more conversations. And so I'm really excited about what I'm seeing already, and we're only, you know, 3 months in. So I guess not even really, we're 2 months in. So what I really, and the other thing that happens with the EES data is it's 4th and 5th grade specific. And so we're having conversations about, okay, what does persevering look like in kindergarten? And how do we measure that? What does working collaboratively look like in 1st grade, right? Because that can be a Zoom, you know? And so how are we going to measure success in that? What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? And how are our kids feeling that don't get the EES formalized data? So I don't have a lot to say because most of it's in here, and I've kind of, everybody sort of beautifully touched on all of it, but I have to say, when I was reflecting on the SIP from last year, and when I was looking at this SIP this year, I just got excited because I feel like everybody's vested and we're talking about all of the kids. And I feel like historically, sometimes there's groups that get left out. And so I felt very intentional about that, and I'm pumped. So. Yeah.
Thank you. Questions? Yeah.
Thank you. Megan, I love your Wolfpack block idea, like during that time. So you have all the support for them. do they, are they working with each other as well in a small group of learning group?
Yeah, so essentially all the classes, all grade level classes at that time are split into their 7, 8, 9 different groups depending on the number of kids, and there's about 6 kids, 7 kids in each group. And the parents are pushing in, they're targeted to their skill and growth goal level. And they're working really closely with that target group for a cycle of time, depending on the grade level, they kind of all schedule it a little bit differently. It could be a 3-week cycle where they're working closely with that group, monitoring the data, reassessing, using all those formative assessments to then reform those groups for the next 3-week cycle and so on. And so, I mean, we had a leadership team meeting this Wednesday morning to do a showcase, a reflection, and like all of them presented on their progress towards their whole pack block groups. Just the impact that they're describing, seeing, and students' academic, improvements, and also their just connections with one another has been huge. And then the other big thing I heard that came out of that is our parent educators. One, I hope some of them are on this Zoom call somewhere or whatever, or I tell them this all the time, they are incredible. And to make sure that we use their full capacities in a way that they feel like honored and valued, and they're using their skill sets in a way that's meaningful, has really come out with that, because we're fully utilizing their strengths. And the team is just they're tight with the teachers, they've got communication systems and data systems and instructional systems, and our whole school community is just lockstep on this. And it's a priority for all of us, and it's a huge leveraging piece for our leadership team, which then translates into our PLC work. And so it's really focused what we're doing, how we're using data, and it makes it all of our responsibilities. It's very public. That's what making practice public has been a thing we've been doing the last 2 years, opening the doors, sharing our practice, highlighting, celebrating, and also making sure that all of our look-forwards are there. There's clear learning targets. There's clear instructional goals that we are committed to through that cycle, and we have data that we're using to inform the next step. So everything is just been really incredible to see. And I think we're moving forward through new cycles, and we'll continue to see growth, but it's been a really cool movement at our school this year.
Well, it must also be a lot of work to coordinate and to be so intentional all the time, right, through this whole process. So I appreciate that. And I think we should also do a better job in communicating and talk about how through this, the intentionality of focusing on the direct support. Sometimes, we provide support, but they're kind of all scattered and we don't really know who gets what. And so I really like the fact that you are so intentional about this. And I also really like the fact that, and I know that we do this all across, the district, but the fact that the students are together and learning is really a very pro-female, other cultural. There's a lot of different cultures that like to learn in groups, right? And so having these kind of these groups, a learning model, I think is very culturally relevant and supportive, because I hope that we embrace these kind of, innovation and have different ways for students to connect through their learning. So I appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
And Megan won't sell herself, so I'll sell her, but the intentionality that went behind just the pure schedule to make that happen was insanity. So I would give her, she'll never sing her own praises, but I'll sing them for her. That was amazing.
I can imagine it, yes.
Let's not talk about schedules. Sorry.
And then also, I really appreciate, sometimes we forget about the joy in education, and really, as an educator, you want to focus on the hard stuff, right? But then learning really at the essence, and I think we've been talking about this, how you want to get that internal motivation. Get kids to get internally motivated by their own curiosity and creativity, and how you're creating this culture to bring that out. So sometimes we think it's the foo-foo stuff, but really it is really a critical part of creating this very creative, learning culture that they want to learn by themselves. So it's actually a very hard task, and I really appreciate that you're tackling on, even though it sounds very joyful and fun to do, but it is also, doing that is really hard. So thank you for that.
Maggie Todd.
Yeah, I'm just hearing great things about people's kids' experiences at West Mercer, so that's fantastic. And as far as Northwood goes, I have to say, I remember visiting your classroom on a school board visit a couple of years ago and thinking like, I want to be in Julie's class. Like I want to go back to 3rd grade or whatever it was. So I can only imagine what that's like on a school-wide basis. So nice job and thanks.
I don't really have any questions. The things that I'm loving the most that I'm hearing, I love the Wolfpack thing. In fact, had a little conversation with someone back there in terms of, you know, doing the same thing with math classes and in upper level, secondary, middle school, high school, and being able to break it down and how can we more directly meet. And it's a scheduling nightmare. And there's pros and cons to everything, but what I also love is seeing is the modeling that you are demonstrating to our our staff and our students. Hey, let's try this new thing. Hopefully we succeed. We might not, and we'll retool if we need to. But you know, we give lip service often to our kids about, you know, you learn the most by failing, but then we don't show them our failures. And so it doesn't sound like you're failing, but you're trying new things. And if you're not trying new things, then I mean, you're not going to fail, right? So, I think that's great. And I think also, you know, I mean, COVID was tough on everybody, but you know, I mean, my heart goes out to our elementary school staff who I think in large part do this work because of their connection with their students and hands-on with students, because that's how you communicate with the littles. And for you to bring that joy to the staff, for them to be able to absorb that, just helps create this community where people love coming to work, and then, you know, it all trickles down. So thank you for that. I mean, it's infectious. Thank you.
Maggie, can I answer your earlier question? Because I'm really proud of the equity work that my team's doing at Northwood. So, can I? Yeah, okay. Sorry, I was like, right. So we've done the last 2 years, we've basically done a really deep dive into race. And this year, we're basically different. Our equity team is really, really passionate. So they're going to basically differentiate for the needs of what our staff needs at this point in time. So our new staff will do the deep dive into race, so our sort of modules 1 through 4. And then the second group will get sort of these mini equity sessions in the other isms, you know, so like heteronormative, you guys, I can never say it, heteronormativism, genderism, ableism, all of those things. And then we'll have a third group who feels like they're really ready to have a coach in their classroom and help them analyze what their lessons look like and how they're using an equity lens. And so it's kind of like the beginning, the middle, and then sort of the, I guess, next phase. And I was excited they came to me with the idea because it was new and different. And it's also what we ask teachers to do in their classrooms. And so to model it in our adult learning felt really good to me. So sorry, I wanted to sing their praises because they're doing really excellent work.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew? Sure. Any thoughts, questions?
I was just say the Wolfpack thing sounds amazing. I would love to have a Lakers type thing when I was in elementary school, and I'm a proud Lakers Lion, but
I'll say I really like this and it's great. I just remember in 3rd grade with Miss Di when she was at West Mercer. I remember my outlet was creating paper computers, and I had a whole company that I called Pear, based off of Apple. It was great. I sold a lot of products because I had, you know, made all them, but I just remember that creativity that Miss Di gave to me was inspiring, and it led me to having that joiner class. Again, we're talking about connections. Led me to keep pursuing things that I trouble at in elementary school. When it came to reading, I would get discouraged when other students were maybe reading harder texts. and being dyslexic, I would have setbacks with that, and, Ms. Dye did a really great job with working with me, and my family on looking at how we can take the positives and keep adding on that. And just really looking at how she can help me, succeed, and she really did a great job at, you know, looking at different books I can read, and different types of novels. And I found a lot of success in that. So I just see this being built upon and continued, and it's just all great stuff. So thank you to all the elementary principals.
Thank you.
With that, thank you very much. The board very much appreciates the work that you and your teams have done. And we appreciate the leadership you've shown to bring together these plans and, you know, make a whole team execute forward on this. So thank you very much for your care and concern of our island students.
Quick recap.
I wanted to reset there. And we will proceed to the recognitions, yes.
We're back.
Okay, with that, we're back at 6:45 and we'll do recognitions first and then do public input if there's anything.
Great. Well, this has been a long time coming for this group of incredible students who we have here tonight. And these are our National Merit Scholarship winners for last school year. So it's been around since 1955. The road is long, and I know you're in the middle of it, but we certainly want to recognize you. This starts when juniors take the PSAT and submit an application to the program. And each year, the program receives about 1.5 million applications, with 50,000 of them qualifying for recognition in the scholarship program as a semifinalist or commended students. In early September of this year, approximately 16,000 students are notified that they have been selected as National Merit Scholarship Program semifinalists. I'm happy to inform you that these seven before us tonight, MIHS seniors have been notified that they're National Merit Scholarship Program semifinalists. So we want to congratulate all seven of them. Tonight we have Samara Blooming. Here. Emily Gordon King. Paul Lynn. Rachel Sen. Paul Silverman. And Charlotte Wood. I know you have family who are here as well, and I know Alex, you have a call time up in Greece at 7 o'clock, but we do want to let you maybe each just take a moment, introduce yourself, introduce your parents if you're here. If you have anything you want to say, you certainly can, but we certainly wish you all the best too in the next phase of the process. So we want to start down. You want to start?
Okay, well, I'm Emily Gordon King, my parents, John King and Cheryl Horton, are there in the back. And I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity to be recognized.
My name's Tonga. I'm here with my mom, Nam Kiao, and I'm also very happy to be here and be recognized for this. Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Rachel Sen. That's my mom, state representative on a set. Yeah, really elected. And very happy.
Hi, I'm Miles Silverman. These are I'm Miles Silverman, sorry, I cannot speak. These are my parents, Maya and Alex. I am extraordinarily lucky to be able to be here. As someone who was diagnosed with autism for the age of 3, I needed the resources that my parents in the school district, especially thanks to Dr. Rundle here, have provided me to be able to push myself in my studies and to be able to get here. So thank you all so much for giving me that.
I'm Elliot. My mom's in South Korea right now. My dad's at home, but I'm here. I'm thankful for the opportunity to be recognized. So thank you, everybody.
I'm Samara Blooming. I'm here with my dad, Jason Blooming, and I'm just very happy for the opportunity. Hi, I'm Charlotte Wood. I'm here with my parents, Sarah and Matthew Wood, and this is a really exciting opportunity and could hopefully mean a lot of scholarship money.
If you would come right up here, the board will join you for a photo. It's good.
I'll get a picture and then you guys can get on. I'll be back. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Okay, now stay current. Too busy.
Thank you.
One minute. Yes.
Minutes,
Yeah, I felt like a really good energy out of that. I was kind of physical. They're all taking coffee. Well, they're around them. Yeah, the fact that they still have it at the end of they would be. You know how you yeah. Excellent point. Yeah.
Okay, we are back, and allowing the room to be cleared up, there's some battery cables copper cables to be plugged in. And, do we have any public input first real quick? I see no public input. I will make a call. Anyone who would like to give public input is more than welcome to come and attend or do so over Zoom. With that, we will move to the student representative report. Andrew, please.
Start with the elementary schools. So the elementary students let us know that recess is still the favorite part of their day. They like playing different sports at recess, including kickball, foursquare, and flag football.
Also during our student advisory, students told us that going to and from school and during recess, they're working on behavior management a little bit. So we think probably coming back from COVID, students are excited to be back, but also have to remember that we have to respect each other. Students in DI also said they were super excited that DI is coming up and they're excited to be part of that. I know that's a big community there. The West Mercer play is also starting up in January. We don't know what play. We probably should have asked Principal Isaacson what play if she knows yet, but we don't yet. And they're just overall excited to perform for the play.
Yeah, and for the middle school, grading for equity is being continued this year, as we heard from the SIP a couple weeks ago. We heard from the middle schoolers that most like the 1 through 4 grading system, but when students don't like it, it's generally because of the system change, not because of the system itself, and just adjusting to what a 3 or a 4 looks like, and like, how can we get teachers to like see the change. And then there's also leader homecoming at the middle school and the leadership classes like that.
We think the school that the leadership class is helping with the Gator homecoming, and then not only that, also having the middle school come up at the end of November with the leadership class to hang out. So when we talk about building kind of that school, more school-wide community, we're having some of the 7th and 8th graders meet our seniors and juniors in high school, and they're able to work together and problem solve and look at issues together. As you guys know, there, were a lot of, conversations happening at the middle school. We also heard that there was a lot of conversations when it came to the midterms and what that might look like, so we were having conversations during our advisory about how we can have thoughtful conversations, and a lot of students said that their teachers were having very thoughtful conversations that were invoking different kinds of thinking.
For the high school, we have a fall sports update for you, just know it's a little bit long. I was the sports editor, there is 9 fall sports. So, boys tennis, one Kinko, and we'll have state in the spring. And boys golf qualified for state at districts, and that state will also happen this spring. Boys cross country, one Kinko, and they placed 10th in state this past weekend. Girls volleyball tonight is making a run for districts, and if they win against, West Seattle, they go to state. The unified football game happened today, and students did a really good job of showing up. We had the band, cheerleaders, lots of student response from that. Girls Swipe is going undefeated this season, and they're at state right now. Boys water polo is going to the state championship. And I think that's it for the fall sports. And so freshmen are adjusting well to this first quarter, and as the first quarter wraps up, we are seeing a little bit of stress from students, but I think once those grades end, which will happen today or tomorrow, they should be all good.
Yeah, orchestra had their first performance in late October with over 300 players in 8 schools, which is really cool. We talked a little bit about the new library, which was being used by all high schoolers, so we put down, sometimes students are forgetting it's a library and not social hour. So we have the quiet room and then the regular room, but sometimes it feels like it's louder in there than a lunchroom. As you guys know, the All Island Band Night was a massive success. Breeze is happening today, which is also super exciting. Shows will run tonight at 7 p.m. on the 10th and 12th, and the 17th through the 19th, all starting at 7 in the pack. We didn't write this in the report because we just had our Veterans Day assembly, but we thought that went really well. We had our choir and parts members of our orchestra play in Flanders Field, which was really nice. And we were honoring veterans in the community, and we had our guest speaker, Michael Hughes, who's the computer science teacher. He's also a veteran, talk about some of his experience in the Marine Corps. So it was very cool to go back to in-person assemblies, because the last time we had that was my freshman year, so that's 2019. So it's great having these spirit assemblies, but it's also really impactful to have these more serious assemblies as well. Finally, WASDA is the annual conference is happening next week. Ashka and I are going to that, which we're super excited about. We like to learn about, continue to learn about different school board reps and what they're doing throughout the state, and how we can learn and then implement some of the successes they have back to our positions. So we're excited about that. Any questions or comments?
How's the new culinary room? Have you tasted anything from it?
I personally haven't tasted. I know journalism has covered the class twice, once in the beginning of the year when they were getting they have to get like food handling license. And then once again, we did like what's cooking with culinary arts, and everyone says that the room is super nice and everything smells good.
I bet. I think what's also cool about getting the food license is that also can prepare you for jobs that most of the jobs you have to work as a waiter or whatever, you need that license. Even working our own student store, you need that license. So by taking that class, what I've heard is just students who've taken that class, they already get that certification. So when they go out for employment, most employers in that industry require it. And they already have a leg up being in high school, getting certified like that. And I was just talking to one student who took that, and they just said that was very nice, because they're applying for a job in Bellevue. And they said, well, it was nice that I already have a food handler's permit, and they said many high schoolers don't have it.
Yeah,
until they were developed like that. So I found that very interesting.
wow, that's great, thank you. Thank you for the update. Any questions? Sorry, anytime. And thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to the superintendent report, and I think also a few recognitions left over to you as well.
Yes, so a couple of things. First off, I wanted to recognize Akshay, Andrew, and the superintendent student advisory. A reporter from District Administrator, which is a national publication, had contacted us. And so I certainly want to point out Superintendent Kolofsky has started the superintendent student advisory, and I've had the opportunity to pick it up, but we were featured in an article that I'll put into the board report this week. It's online right now. Mr. Henry has shared that with me, but had a chance to interview. There were 4 of you who had a chance to speak, and so thank you very much for participating in that and the work that you're continuing to do. In terms of a couple more recognitions, some that we tend to, as a school district, really think about and recognize all of our staff during what is traditionally Teacher Appreciation Week, the first week of May. However, there are some national recognitions too that happen throughout the year. There's a Nurses Day and some others. And I did want to recognize that next week, the 14th through the 18th, is American Education Week as a whole. And a couple of aspects of that as part of this. November 16th is celebrated as Education Support Professionals Day. So as you heard Principal Isaacson really commending and commenting on the power of all of our staff members and the impact that they have, that's important. And then as we look forward to Friday, that will be American Education Week of the 18th, and it celebrates substitute educators. And so a couple of certainly others who make a difference in our schools. So we wanted to point those out. You know, I certainly building off of what the principal said, Veterans Day, I did put out a message this afternoon to our community, fairly short. We had talked about Veterans Day earlier on in the month in a release, but just reminding everyone that while tomorrow is a day off, it's also a day for us to at least engage in conversations with our kids and others about, you know, why we have the day off and what does that really mean for our country. And the other sentiment I have in there that I want to share before a couple others is just condolences and thoughts to Ingram High School, the community in and around the school district there in Seattle. You know, it's you know, I think I've been struggling throughout the week about, you know, what's the right message, because gun violence with youth in this country has been escalating at rates that certainly are troubling, and whether or not that's because of suicide, homicide, or injury, you know, it's happening, and it's happening in our community here in the Puget Sound region. And unfortunately, in this situation, it's spilled into one of our high schools. So I know MIEA had sent a message over to their school, and we've sent one as well. So thoughts with that. Just a couple other announcements as we look towards just kind of wrapping up and heading in, since we don't have a board meeting for a little while. Our special education team, special services, for the 3rd year in a row under Dr. Booby's leadership, received a level 1 status determination by OSPI. And there are 3 levels. 1 is no corrective action. 2 is corrective action with basically a paper review. And then a 3rd would be a much more in-depth review based on compliance issues. And we were level 1 again. So I know that starts with all of our paraeducators, our teachers, our therapists, and everyone, our teachers, our principals. So a job well done there. Building on that, we had a great chamber event last week, and they had a chance to visit the culinary arts room, to see the library, and then they even got a sneak peek of Greece. I've already been contacted by a couple of them. They'll be going to the event now. But it was a great opportunity. We have partnered 3 different local businesses who arrived. It was the first time in our high school, and they're already partnering up with teachers to go into doing some work with chiropractic and sport and spine, culinary, arts. And then we also, partnered with, independent rabbi who, just moved here to Mercer Island. And actually, she's going to be working with our drama team as they're preparing for their winter play, coming up, which is really built around the child experience of the Holocaust. And so it was great to be able to connect those. So I want to thank Ian, Mr. Henry over there for orchestrating that great event. With that, I think that wraps up my report tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Ronald. Let's move on to number 3. Number 3B, Board Policy 1800-089, the website update.
Great, I'm going to turn it over to Director Roger, Director Henry, to give us our new update.
So Andrew, just putting our mock-up up on the screen. This would be the mock-up for the homepage of our district website. The template and design is similar for the school sites. A couple changes that we've made from initially showing you the mock-up is we've added a third color for the district and for the school sites. As you can see underneath the menu bar, there's a blue horizontal line, and that blue is the primary blue in the logo of the district, which we can obviously see on the wall over here and on the logo on the mock-up. That blue is also present in other aspects of the site. If we scroll down through the, it's down here at the bottom. It's also in the arrows for the calendar. And I believe that's the only place. Right? The bar at the bottom. The bar at the bottom, yeah. So we've added this in to add a little bit more color and to distract from the maroon, which we've heard in feedback is there's a lot of it. So we're looking at just a little bit different color scheme for all of our sites, and the primary, secondary, and third colors. Primary maroon, secondary is a little bit the blue, and then the lighter blue is the third color. But that'll be the same for all the school sites too. That they'll have a third color that is in the same locations on the site that connects with their logo. Because a couple of the schools, Lake Ridge and Northwood, have yellow in their logo, we weren't able to get the yellow as a primary or secondary color for the accessibility issues with just being able to put text on top of that color. It's hard to see, but we wanted to include the yellow for them in a way that aligned with their logo, and we hit upon the idea of adding a third color.
Yeah, so as Ian mentioned, earlier in our last report, we've really been trying to incorporate a lot of the feedback from our surveys, from our community, from the board in this process. And so as we've continued going through this process, we've been working with Vital Site to try and make sure that feedback is implemented. One element that we really talked about was the search bar. Other elements that we talked about is making sure that the calendar is prominent, making sure that Ian mentioned that red is broken up. We did want to share an update on our timeline. We are still planning on launching in January. However, we want to let you know that in order to fully make sure that we've gone through and provided all the feedback, we may have to push back our website launch slightly. So we may potentially, rather than looking at an early January date, we may be looking at mid or the end of January. For that launch, we've also been working with Superintendent Rundle around other events that are happening at that time to make sure that it's not too disruptive. We still plan on doing a full and complete process. And as I mentioned, in order to make sure that we've fully incorporated that feedback, and we've given time to make sure that we launched it in a way that really incorporates what we heard and works for our buildings. We'd rather make sure that we do it right than have it right there on January 1st.
So I know some of the questions last time were, how do we capture your input? And so tonight's an opportunity, and then we could also explore other options about wanting to make sure that, we're meeting the interest, not just of your channel or the spot there, but overall, what are the recommendations you have as a board? And want to make sure that we incorporate into it, so we'll bring it over for questions and comments.
Thank you very much, Andrews. Any comments, Dan?
No, not right now.
Okay.
I think we just talked about last time about how we want to make the website as kind of an advertising promo of all the good things that we're doing, instead of just a site where people have to be cited and they come here as a resource, but more of a showcase of all the wonderful things we're doing. And I know that Maggie Ty has some really wonderful ideas about specifically for the board, the tab for the board. So I'll just let her speak.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, I'm hearing like echo back. Let me mute out my thing so I can just, okay. I guess I'm wanting input from the board because I would like to really flesh out the page on like board information more, because right now it's just kind of bare bones. There's like, this is the Mercer Island School Board, you know, board directors are elected for a 4-year term. Here are your current board representatives. And then that's it, right? I'd love to have something on there about like our student representatives and how unique that is. And I don't know if they currently have a little profile on there or not. If they don't, add them on. I'd like for the sake of transparency and people in the community being able to sort of keep track of what's going on in the board, I would love to have just a short little introduction to, like, we all kind of got probably when we joined the board, to like what the board annual calendar looks like, and why do certain things come up in the fall versus the spring, and like when does the budget happen, you know, kind of like maybe like an FAQ about the board and how it works. And if people want to watch board meetings live, or they want to go back and see old board meetings, like just simple like instructions for how to do that. So I'm perfectly happy to do that work if the board wants to like authorize me to do that work. And I'm happy to take suggestions as far as what we should or should not include. I just figure that we're all in favor of people in the community, whether they're on like the staff or, you know, parents or students, for the older students, you know, or community members, to be able to like know who we are and what we're doing, and how they can reach out. So I guess that's my ask for tonight is, do you have it? Is the board as a whole okay with me just doing that? I guess I'd be a committee of one unless someone else wants to get involved in that.
That's a great idea. I think that would be good to have 1 or 2 board members look at the board section of the website and give kind of more high-speed feedback. Do I hear any objections to that? And if anybody else would like to join, please let me know. But hearing no objections, Maggie Ty, I think that's yours.
Okay.
Thank you very much for taking this on.
Absolutely. And then the other thing just that we've heard as of today from some community members is a hope that in the new website that it'll be more prominent or more obvious how students can like report, for example, incidents of harassment or incidents of like racial, religious harassment, for example. I know that some school districts near us have like a link on their main, you know, homepage, landing page, where it's like, click here to report whatever. You know, I know we don't necessarily want to give up like real estate on like the homepage, right? But is that something that could cycle through, or is that something that could, I know it's very hard to find. Like I have found it myself for people in the past, and it has taken like multiple steps and searches of poking around. So just keeping that in mind as you guys think about how you know where certain information is going, like to just make it like right now basically you have to look alphabetically and find H is for harassment, you know. So thank you.
Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just gonna comment with respect to that. We did look at that. We do have the Standing Hook Promise app, which is actually has been viewed by students, and on their student issued iPads. So in terms of student access, we actually are finding that students are going to the district website, but it says they're using apps. And that's where we're making them readily available on their iPad. I'm not arguing that it's a bad idea. I'm just saying that the primary use that we've seen and it's been most beneficial, and that's consistent with what we heard when working with Sandy Hook, is just that the students are not looking to the website to make those reports. They're having it on the iPad is actually what they see greatest utility in the district where they use the app. The other thing is what's most important is when people do use the website. And again, this is just feedback from Sandy Hook, who's in multiple districts across the United States. It is not so much about, at least for reporting concerns, it's not so much about the format, but just how readily it comes up in the search bar. Because most people will not if they're in distress of some nature, the reporters, they won't navigate through the various headings and what have you. They just go straight to search bar and put in what they're concerned about. So that's just the only feedback, because we had those specific questions of whether it was important to put a button or something to the Sandy Hook promise prominently in the middle of our district website.
Yeah, it might, that's very helpful. Thank you for that. It might make more sense to have it in a context, like if it's like, this is what our district is doing about social and emotional learning, for example, or this is what our district is doing about belonging, then it's part of like that FAQ or whatever. Like we have this thing and all students have access to it through a button, through an app on their iPads, then that's the answer. It's not necessarily to put the link right there, but just to like have that information somewhere logical that the average like parent could find it.
Yeah, just following up, the thing that we discussed at the last board meeting where we talked about the website was looking at private schools. And sort of for the content, one Lakeside, I like it's maroon as well, so they're just like for the color palette, they can see what they've done. So I would look at Lakeside, also I would just take a look at University of Prep, and they have a section of like you prep by the numbers, which sort of encapsulates some of the suggestions that I had at the meeting about ways to feature like accolades or sort of, various, honors that our students like, accomplishments. But I would take a deep look at what private schools just tell our story. I mean, I think one of the things that stuck out in the survey for new families was how much the website was a driver and the dominant driver of like what informed their decision to when enrolling in Mercer Island. So I think it's really important to tell our story and to tell it well and to tell it sort of similarly to private school. And to see a lot less instances of public schools, I think, doing it well.
Yeah, sure.
I would love to see, I think this actually, a lot of things that have been said, a place for celebration and recognition, especially from our staff. I think we've done a great job, Henry, has done a great job of highlighting our student successes on our social media accounts. And that's where our students go, so I think that's a really important thing. But in terms of, people looking at the district, we know that there's, and I'm not saying this because we have staff here in the room, I'm saying it because we know that there's things happening in classrooms that we find out about, but that the community as a whole doesn't find out about. And so I just think this would be a great opportunity, whether it's monthly or whatever, that the staff person is recognized and here's what they're doing, kind of thing. We can do that with students too. I think it happens in other ways with students. But I think it also accomplishes what Tam's been talking about in terms of broadcasting, like here's who we are and what we're all about. And those personal stories are most meaningful, I think.
Is the website intended to be dynamic and changing in a high frequency basis? News, email being sent, all that type of work?
Yeah.
And that's a very big picture there that could be much more relevant and recent picture. I'm wondering if that's also possible.
That's in the mock-up, that's a stock photo.
Yeah.
It's not a PR, but it can rotate through and it can rotate through video. And it'll go through, and then as those stories get a little bit older, they can be moved down to the school news section, which is just below. And then we can have inside pages that are built with photos and a little bit more dynamic content. So there's school news, it could be feature stories, it could be person of the month, teacher of the month, event, the band, the athlete, athletics, something at the high school.
those in the school news could be at the top in the rotation section, but as they rotate through and get a little bit older, you want to keep that content fresh and you want to keep things on there fresh so that when people come, they will see something new and interesting and informative and marketing, but also the ability to search for the different things that they want on the site.
And we will have analytics and such, sorry.
Yeah.
Analytics as well.
And I don't know if Ian mentioned this, but I did want to restate this as well. The menus that you see here are not reflective of the menus that we will have on our website. And so, I know that we've been talking about this as a mock-up. They were really using it for a visual display. The buttons will be based on our analytics and what we found for our committees in terms of what will be here. And Maggie, to your point, one menu that we have included that is not present here in this mock-up is a school board menu. So that will be present there. So I just wanted to reiterate that for any of our committee members that are watching and they're saying, hey, these are the menus that we were discussing during our meetings. These are really just the ones that are part of the stock template along with the images. And then just to your point, some of the feedback or the conversation that we're continuing to have with Final Site on this is finding, dynamic elements to be able to highlight things, whether that's say something, whether that's other initiatives that are happening at that point, at that time. How do we make sure that those are able to be highlighted in ways that we've seen, either on different websites or from feedback from our committee. So those are all things that are part of this ongoing process, as we're just learning how this particular vendor utilizes all those various tools.
Thank you, Andrew. I wanted to just say that I do see that our student representatives are on the current website. I hadn't realized that they were on there. So, but I do think there should be information about our wonderful student representative program. So I've never been so excited about the launch of a website, I have to say.
Video in a sense where I think what's really, every single time I attend events, like when I go to the pep rally, when I go to the parade, when I go to the band night, or I see the artwork, right? That's what sells our school, without having to even write anything. Just having snippets of those videos, it feels really powerful because I see the kids walking the field. So I wish, I would like to see more videos so that people don't have to read, but they can just get a feel immersed on it. And when I'm in those moments and I watch these videos, I want to be back at school. And so incorporating a lot more of those kind of real life events.
For sure. An example is the homecoming parade. I took a bunch of different video, edited into one file, put it on social media. That same thing can be done on this site. Now that we have video, put the video on our site, and when you put it on social media, you link to the site. You drive people, we put like 10 seconds on social media, and then here's the link to watch the full thing. That could apply to a pep rally, that could apply to a band event, an athletic event, the Veterans Day parade, or that Heidi talked about. So all those things should go on our website natively on video, not specifically on YouTube.
Yeah.
We don't want to drive people to YouTube. We want them to know that, hey, it's on our site. Watch it on our site. Oh, hey, what's this about? Registration or enrollment or whatever. So I agree with you 100%.
You start.
I just have two questions. My first one is like, when you guys finish the website or are close to done, is there gonna be a community meeting to test out the features so you can get that final feedback? Or how is that gonna work when it's close to done?
Did you want to ask your second question as well? Or?
My other question is well, it's not really a question, but I think for the high school website, it could be interesting if you meet with radio and journalism and the TV. And so you can pull their news outlets. You don't have to make your own. It's a ton of work to do that. And the high school is already producing that stuff, student led, so you can pull some of that. Very powerful.
So, the process that we've identified so far in terms of feedback loop is, up to the launch of the website. We all fully acknowledge that after we launch the website, there will be continue to be surveys, as there will, be little iterations and changes that will need to be made based on feedback. But at this time, we have not necessarily identified what that process looks like after the launch. But I do appreciate that. So Ian and I'll touch base, and we'll talk a little bit about that process of what that feedback loop looks like after January. And I think that's a great idea in terms of the journalism and the high school radio. And one thing that I wanted to give a shout out to right now is Michael Ketchum's class. He launched MIHS.TV, which I've had a chance to take a look at a little bit more. But I've been really impressed with the content that they've been creating there as well.
One of the aspects of final site is there's also a warranty period. When they feel they have the site built and ready to go, we get a warranty period where we get to test it and see that the links work, it looks how we want, the content migration to happen. I believe it's a 2-week process that we get for the warranty. I'd have to go back and look at my notes, but I believe it's 2 weeks, so we have time to do that, to put out, here's the beta site, this is how it looks. Go to town, what's wrong with it? Help us now so that we don't launch with errors.
It's not really a question. I'm, as a student, sometimes I feel really overwhelmed while looking at a current website. And I feel like a lot of students share this. When you click students, you're led with kind of a crazy directory. And at times it's hard to see exactly what you're looking for. And I know you guys have addressed this. We talked about this at the last meeting. But really a flushed out design for students, or maybe right when you click students, I think the biggest thing is schedules. What is the schedule? And you have to click 5 or 6 times until you get to the 2023 schedule or all of our modified ones, as they do with days off. And I know you're working on that, but just seeing how really trying to make as minimal clicks as possible, where students, it can almost have at the top, the latest messages from the principal. And then it could have schedules, and then it has classes and information. I think would really be great, because when looking for schedules, if you use the search bar, there's no schedule on it, so you have to click for the search bar, and then you kind of get at times as with the Google search, sometimes it gets pulled to the most popular thing, which could be 5 or 6 years old, and that's just not the current information. And then also the calendar feature, I saw that on this one, wherever it was scrolled to. I really like that, and that could also be with students, just student events, football game, volleyball. I think it would be good, because besides it being in our announcements, right now, it doesn't really say when our volleyball games are and where they're at. And I think in that student section, it just has a really flushed out design, where as you scroll, it has your calendars, your events, your information all at once, and it's just, you don't really have to dig for it. So
one of the things, Andrew, you can scroll up on the homepage above the full, which is the bottom of the screen, is the real estate we have with those 6 icons across the bottom and the icons at the top. We can change what the word is, we can change it, we can make where it says apply schedule, and that could be paramount across all schools, and boom, when it's there every time we go there. Or it could be somewhere just up above that in the upper right corner, here the search bar, where people if they're searching for something, okay, so there's those aspects of the real estate available on all 7 sites as to where you put that, so it's easily to find, but also where you put it within the flyout menu on the site map. So it's great. What you say is, yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree.
thank you.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much. We work on the website. And are we ready to proceed? Okay, let's move on to the next item, 3C, on the facilities and capital assets, long range comprehensive facilities plan and reconvening of the facilities advisory committee.
So I hope that our study session, good use of your time, and I know that it certainly helped us with some clarity, and we're off and running in some directions, but we wanted to loop back tonight just to finalize plans for that long range facilities committee, both in terms of again, making sure we have the representation that we want on that, and so some guidance there, and then just that final thumbs up that we want to follow that timeline that we heard from Mayo. So those were kind of the 2 topics that we wanted to return to.
Great, thank you. So with this, the intent is to bring back Malin, who did our first comprehensive plan, to, update it. And then to bring back the committee and add new members as needed. And, generally by next year, 8 month thereabouts timeframe, to be able to go back out to the broader community with a more cohesive plan around how we will maintain, update our facilities. So any thoughts from board members, Dan? Yeah. Maggie Chai? Deborah?
Nothing.
And Andrew Nasha, any?
So we didn't really, were able to attend the whole meeting, so maybe a summary of that for us would be great for the key points that were talked about. During that, I don't wanna spend more time than what is needed just for us to, but maybe a quick little recap on what was discussed and. How student reps can play a part of that would be great. We were only there for 30 minutes, so I felt like we kind of jumped into it and then left before you really got to get a grasp of anything, so. I don't know if anyone likes to talk about that.
Sure. I think, in general, we went over how the previous plan was created and the information that went into that, including demographics and, the community input around the buildings, the studies that have been done on the quality of the buildings. All that was talked about. We talked quite a bit about the committee itself, how that was selected. Was it a broad spectrum of community members, students, staff that went towards that committee? We talked a little bit about how to get people up to speed, possible options of things we could do around the building, but really what we want to have happen is, in some sense, no preconceived notions, to allow the committee and the experts from with Brandy and the others in our facilities group to do the work involved to come and update that solution for us as to what needs to happen. We did spend some time as well talking about the city's input. We did talk to the city about this during a city council linkage. Shared with them that we are going to go through this plan. They are doing something similar with respect to city facilities, and there might be some opportunity to coordinate around that. So I think that's about
Student voice.
and yes, and I think last time we had student voice on the committee. This time we plan to continue that as well.
I think I would love to see it grow too. We had 2 high school students. I think they were both seniors, if not junior and senior, and I would love to see a broader range. I think I think middle schoolers have lots of input and have more recently been in elementary schools than the high schoolers have been. So
Yeah, we had participation from the community at large outside the school district, from chamber, from athletics teams, from drama teams, science teams, teachers in a variety of fields. Yeah, so I think the website that lists the current long-range comprehensive plan lists all the people who participated. So you can see that directly, and we'd love to welcome them back. There was a significant number of meetings, right, Deborah? We had 6 or 8 meetings,
at least,
of about 2 to 3 hours each.
with
So-
dinner.
With dinner, yeah, you get fed. So there is a commitment, and it's important that people commit to the process because it builds upon each other. You kind of have to know where you're starting from, the history, to be able to make the final set of decisions we need to make at the end.
Is
then,
that too much? Sorry, is that too much of a commitment for a middle schooler? You think those long meetings? That seems like a bit much, no?
No, I mean, our high schoolers, I mean, you know, their attendance wasn't as good because they have more conflicts. That they can't necessarily set aside, but. You know, they were really, Malin does a great job with these meetings. They're engaging, they provide the right amount of information. You're getting up, you're picking, they really kind of run it like a little workshop each time, so. I mean, I thought they were tremendously engaging, I think that, I mean, it's like city planning, I mean, it was just really informative, and, we have students, I don't think it's for everyone. But I think we'll be able to find some that think that.
Yeah, I like the idea of offering it as an opportunity as opposed to presupposing. I think that's a great idea. And I think this one is unique from last time. Last time we didn't have a financial plan around it. This time we explicitly asked for a financial plan, which means what's the bond schedule going to look like? So that we could issue bonds as an output from this to continue rebuilding our schools. So our current bonds expire in 2028 and 2029. We've also we've got an opportunity during a recession to do building and such at potentially a lower cost. So there's a bunch of things that have to go into consideration in the financial plan as well. So I think that's a big new component. So it's very, very important for the community to participate, staff and students as well.
So a couple of, I had taken down notes at your meeting just to make sure we're getting representation. I've added a few others, certainly city council and staff. We want all three levels working with MIPA and preschool, and making sure we have families, also parents of graduates. We had talked about, I've added on there possibly faith-based organizations and having some representation there. So we will start, as you said, Director D'Souza, with the former committee, who wants to come back, and then we'll move from there. Are you ready as a board to select your two representatives to that committee, or do you want to give that more time? We don't have to know that tonight, but I just wanted to check in.
So the previous time it was Deborah and myself who attended. Is there interest from any board? Deborah, any interest from you?
Very much, but I also want to make sure
That's
that.
fair. Any interest from anybody else?
I would love to do it, but I cannot take it on this year, so don't factor me into it.
Dan, Cam.
I don't have to ban I'm interested, but no.
I'm interested, but if the two of you, like with the background knowledge, I think it makes sense that.
Please, please, if you'd like to attend, you're very welcome to attend. In my stead. So, let's put, Dan.
Formalize that one.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed the last exchange. Did we just pick somebody besides Deborah?
Yeah.
Dan, David handed it off.
Okay, Deborah and Dip. Thank you both for doing that. I know it's a big commitment.
Okay. Let us move on to item 3C. Our board policy 1003, letter to legislators in support of maintaining cost of living adjustments. Dan, would you like to lead us through this?
Yeah, so attached is a letter to try to be as succinct and clear as possible, outlining the situation that we've had discussions about as a board. I think the thing we have to talk about today is both timing and then sort of where to go from here. In my view, the sooner the better when it comes to discussions about the regionalization factor. There's a lot that's on the plate to be considered in this legislative session, whether it's the appropriate inflationary measure, fully funding all aspects of education, differences in the prototypical funding model. I think that this is one that needs to be nipped in the bud, so to speak, as soon as possible to give the time that's necessary for these other complex issues. Like, this is not particularly complex. There was a discussion 4 years ago. The facts haven't changed in terms of the underlying economics. There's no suggestion that urban areas such as ourselves have become cheaper to live relative to other places in the state. And so there's nothing that supports any change to the bargain that was already struck. And so I think that needs to be the clear message. It's the reason, I encourage the board tonight to formally approve this letter. And then I think the second is what's the best way to mobilize and for legislators to hear that they need to be focusing on what, the common issues that all school districts face rather than this, which isn't supported by any change back. I think that one, there's, just sort of the grassroots part, which is, school board, us and encouraging other school boards, and PTAs and labor to the extent, either publicly or in private with legislators, telling the story and why this is why any downward adjustments is a bad idea. I think another is looking at potentially existing regional groups such as the School Alliance or the Puget Sound School Association, both of which are run by Grace Yuan at Canal Gates, or I think she's the focal, the contact point there. And the reason I suggest both of those is one, they're regional where it hits everyone. And so it's not just Mercer Island speaking with one voice, because even if the issues that we're voicing concern everyone in the region, like the more different voices and the larger voices will be helpful. And then two, those two groups in particular do have lobbyists that can help from sort of a professional perspective, like help craft that story and communicate that effectively to legislators. I looked at the PDC filings by just putting school into entity search for those that have paid lobbyists, which is sort of fascinating. There's about 45 different schools and entities. The large districts would do what you would imagine, like some of the small school districts, which one might not imagine, is having paid lobbyists on payroll. But I think that considering the dollars at stake for our school district to be recalculated this year based on the reduced regionalization rate would be $2 million. Over the proposed 4 years, it would be $9.35 million. Regionally, we're talking about essentially $1 billion less over 4 years for the region. That I think we should reach out very soon to those regional organizations. And see if there's interest, and then and using those I think is places to direct the effort on sort of the lobbyist side of things.
Yeah, thank you for the update. I would, sorry, Ken. Maggie Ty, any thoughts?
Thank you for doing this. This is a big, heavy lift, and I think you did a really great job of demonstrating that we need this, and it's not taken away from anyone else, which is always huge. It's interesting, and I just thought of this, so I don't even know what the numbers are. But to look at, as a government employee, and I used to be accounting, we would get cost of living increases, and I'm just curious to know and regular ones, and I'm just curious to know, or I will try and take a look and see what the other counties around the state do. Because my only question is, I think this is a really good balance and the way to go for now, but this regionalization isn't enough with our cost of living and the way our rents and housing costs are skyrocketing. And so I think it's smart to play a little conservative in terms of just asking them to keep it and put that on the radar. And then once we come back, to go back and say, here's cost of living increases that are happening over the state or what they are, and don't we deserve to have comparable?
And I completely agree. And I tried to spread that needle, to sort of say, hey, if this is going to be an item for discussion, then upward adjustments also need to be considered. We got the feedback, just sort of, through I think Buzz, when it came to, that there was the potential. But it seemed like a lot of experts thought that it was unlikely that regionalization would be touched because it was potentially explosive. However, we've seen that it's been attempted, and I think it needs to be swatted down quickly, because otherwise it will consume a lot of attention. And I think it goes both ways. As I said, if it's going to be opened up, then I think it should be opened up. But the problem is gonna be also that the time for the other issues that are important, that are already on people's legislative agenda, they're not gonna get as much attention, there's a finite amount of time.
And you know, another point, and I'll take a look at this, working for the state, I think it's a 2% bump in my salary because I'm in King County, which is kind of laughable because it's 2%, but if they're only giving us 1.18 and they're giving state employees too.
And so, like, when it comes to Washington State, from what I can tell, it does not have, at least in this state, as much of a regionalization. They have like nationally and federal, it's pretty common when you look at agencies for different like cities and states. I think it's hard to compare to other states when it comes to public education because each system is so unique in what amount is funded by the states and what amount is funded by local levies and, you know, what's constitutionally required under, you know, like the applicable state and what isn't. But as we discussed, when one looks at California, where there's a lot more flexibility at the local level, you see Palo Alto School District, which is 162% of median spend in the state, whereas we're 88%. We're actually receive less, you know, spend less per student than the average. But what was presented in the OSPI proposal, and then by the committee, it wasn't supported by any facts that said that things had changed in 4 years for a downward adjustment. And I do think, unlike other proposals where there's the question of, will it see the light of day? Is there any traction? Well, this, because it's an OSPI recommendation, like there is a presumptive, you know, weight to that. Which I think creates the urgency to get ahead of this as soon as possible, and then to focus attention on these other matters. And if not, be prepared to, you know, to say, if this is going to be, let's have a discussion, and let's, you know, talk about facts and what makes sense when it comes to, you know, what low, you know, spending at the local level.
So go ahead. Just some updates on some work that we've been working on. I was on a call with Grace Yuan this morning with the School Alliance, and I have forwarded the rough draft of your letter. So she has a better idea of what that looks like. It's certainly now a priority following today's conversation. Director Sullivan attends these meetings usually as well. So it's on there now as far as a priority. You know, there are a couple districts that the transportation and fully funded transportation is a big deal. That's not as much for us. Special education continues to be discussed as we've had conversations with WASDA Region 2. But in speaking with Grace, it's now definitely on her radar. We've got that. I did get it onto the PSESD superintendent priority letter, so it is now on there as well. And that was a conversation that we had as superintendents last week. And then Dan Steele from WASA, he's kind of the WASA legislative advocate and lobbyist, if you will. I've been talking to him kind of separately. He knows that it's a big deal. He's more confident that it's not going to gain much traction because of the law that says, or the language in the law that says, there can't be a regression from where we were, which the 18 to 12% would be. However, he knows that it's a big interest of ours. Issaquah was on the call today with Grace. It's also a big impact for them. I keep trying to also explain that, you know, there's really 3 core issues for us in some of the proposals that have gone out from OSPI. And what was also asked by the legislature to be looked at. One is the prototypical school model. How many staff members is the state actually funding versus what's being funded at the local levy? So we would like to continue to see an increase there. So the state's picking up more of those tabs, which also helps us when we go to think about cost of living raises for our staff and where does that money come from. 2 is special education, certainly wanting to fund that. We're spending north of $2 million a year out of levies locally here for special education, and 3 is regionalization. But I'm really trying to explain that this is really 3 legs of one stool. Now, if you take out one leg, just try to swap it for the other, you're still down to 2 legs that's gonna fall over. You cannot do these in isolation, if you do one, you just negate any gains you made in the other. The last, person that I've also been engaged with is, president of our MIEA, Sally Lozier, who's in the room tonight. We had a conversation this week about this as well. We're gonna come back together in December, talk about WASDA priorities, WEA priorities, and then look at it through the lens of what does that mean for Litchfield School District. So, certainly excited, thank you for your partnership on that. So we're pushing forward. I'm out there, putting it on the top of every agenda I can. As we move forward.
When does the school alliance meet next to try to sort of, I guess, leverage some of the lobbying, abilities that the school alliance has? I know that they have a group that works in public education. It would be nice to be able to utilize that and to at least get a temperature of where legislators are on this, and the extent to which this is going to be a live topic.
We meet monthly in the off season, which is when they're not in session. Once they get into session, depending on how heated it is, they will reiterate this next one. They start pulling us into sidebars with the legislators themselves. And so Grace will literally call Matt or call myself or call Aaron and say, hey, at 3 o'clock tomorrow, we have Representative Sen and, Representative Callan. Can you be there? And then we have meetings there. So it gets heated up there, but they're already talking to legislators. What I would say, just kind of along those lines, we're having a challenging time getting our schedule to match up with Senator Wellman, Representative Pai, and Representative Sen. Knowing that, I still think it's important to try to get the whole board with them, but I was going to throw out a proposal that because of the nature of the timing, a consideration you might make is to have 2 of you represent the board, and we can then set up a time where 2 of you could meet to at least get this on their radars, because their schedules are already filling up as they head into their session. So we'll continue to try, but I just wanted to propose a possible idea, just so that we could possibly get in front of Senator Wellman and our 2 representatives sooner rather than later.
That's a good idea. Let's discuss that next on this matter. I think that's appropriate. First on the letter, do I have, let's take a vote and make sure that all board members approve it. The only one change I would suggest, I don't know, Michelle, if this is possible, and Dan knows his name. For the purpose of this letter, it might be useful to say legislative representative as title instead of just board member.
And sorry, just to clarify, this is also going to go to the city council, correct?
That is correct. Like their meeting is next Tuesday. And they will vote to approve it as well. So it do 2 things. I mean, one, it shows it's a broad community issue that when it comes to funding, it's not just a school district issue. And then 2, sort of going back to my earlier question regarding the school alliance and lobbyists, that cities quite frequently do have lobbyists that are on retainer and employed, in contrast to school districts where some do, but the majority do not.
Thank you very much for taking this on.
Can I make a recommendation? Yeah, this is a really well crafted letter, Dan, and just as a teacher, I know that they have a short attention span. And so I wonder if it might be better just to get the last sentence and put the last sentence like in the very first paragraph. Like, we write in strong opposition and then we ask.
Say what the ask is first.
Yeah, because, I don't know, they're gonna read through all, we don't argue, right, but at least we know, they know what the issue is, and then they can read more, that's just.
That's right. Okay. So we've got 2 amendments on the table. So with that, so the 2 amendments are, one, change the title to legislative rep. Second one is to include towards the front that we urge you to vote against any decrease in the visualization factor. So those would be the two amendments. With that, do I have a motion to approve this letter?
Just to be clear, approve the letter to send our representatives or?
Well, to approve the letter that is signed by this letter that's signed by the board. So in fact, it's a resolution by the board that the board can use in various ways. It could be sent to lobbyists, it could be sent to other school districts, it could be sent to legislators. So it would be an ability for us to speak in a unified voice on this topic to anyone of concern. Okay, with that, do I have a motion for approval?
Motion approved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, second from Jennifer, and all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye, two ayes, okay, and all against? Okay, and with that, we have the letter approved by the board with the amendments as stated. Dan will fix that up and maybe we'll do the signing, not tonight then, but a little bit later. And then the next step was to think about if we cannot schedule a meeting with our legislators, can one or two members of the board meet with them along with Superintendent Rundle, and or anybody else that we need to bring along to discuss the subject. So the idea would be to pick those two members and get approval from the board on that. I'll throw out Dan and myself for this, unless I hear any objections. Okay. Well,
I wonder if our students are interested too. We're not restricted.
we're not restricted by for student attendance in that case, and if they are interested.
Students would be interested.
Okay. Thank you, that's helpful there. Okay, all in favor of this committee of two, along with our student representative, to be able to attend if necessary by legislators? Can I have a motion for that?
So moved.
In a second, please.
Seconded.
Okay, Tab second. Sorry, thank you, Maggie Ty. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? And with that, we've got a pass of 7-0. And okay, so I think we're good, but I think our first goal is to try and get the linkage for the board. And even if we do have the committee of two with our legislators, we would still like a linkage with the entire board, because I think there's many other things we'd love to talk to them about.
Definitely.
And that could be next year.
Yep, definitely.
Real quickly, Asha and I have worked on another letter that was directed towards students. So when we're at the WASDA conference and when we talk to our student reps, Dan's really helped us with sending all the schools that will be impacted by this regionalization factor. So we're going to cross compare from schools we know have student reps versus schools that will be affected by that, and see, well, we're in Spokane, other students that are, and we'll share our letter with them, which more just focuses on what the what the student impact would be with this loss of money coming into the district. So we just want to update you guys on that.
Thank you very much, most appreciated. I think the student voice will probably carry more weight than school board member voice, so it is that is most appreciated, and I think very much so. This is the best time for the chorus to be singing the same song for sure, while it's still in the ideation stage, as opposed to in a committee or in legislation, where it's much more difficult. So I like Dan's considering urgency to get this moving. Okay, thank you very much all on this. Let us keep moving forward. Item 4A, Board Policy 1005, Board Officer and Board Member Duties. This is a monitoring report. There's a significant number of duties here. In the interest of time, I would entertain a motion for an approval on this in full compliance or not.
I move we, find the board in compliance, for policy 1005.
Second.
Can I make one comment before voting?
Yes, please.
The only thing I agree, I just want to call our attention to, section 3. That we will be having a board candidate orientation, coming up, so I'll be talking to, probably, whoever you select as your next president and vice president about scheduling that coming up. But it's just kind of a reminder for the public that, that is a responsibility that the board, hold out, and so we'll be planning that for the vacant positions, or for the contested positions that will be open in May.
And yeah, that's great. And I think anybody who is thinking about being a candidate for the board, this is a great document to read. And it really specifies their core duties for board members. Highly recommend attending board meetings online or in person, and reading the stuff. It's worth your time. Normally, we would take the time to read it out loud, but I think today, with the motion on the floor to approve this, we will move forward a little bit more speedily. Do I have all in favor? Please say aye. 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 Sorry. And all against? Okay, with that, we have a 7-0 passage of approval. Okay, let's move forward. Consent agenda. Item 5. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as published?
So moved.
Second.
And seconded by Dan. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? With that, we have 7-0 passage. Thank you. Superintendent announcements
I had enough in my report, I'm good to go.
and legislative representative report.
Nothing in addition.
The interesting one I think you did raise is, do we want to have a longer term discussion of any lobbyists need for for the board and or school district? And I think there might be some interest around that. Let's see how this goes for these current meetings, but I think we should have on our radar if we should have a lobbyist of our own and see what's required for that. Also, will be interesting to talk to other districts about that, if there are other like-minded districts we join up with.
And that's the other thing, I think it'd be interesting to discuss with the city, because I know that they just recently added 2 lobbyists, which is a fairly new addition for them. And I think, it sort of gets plugged in of for issues, right, that'll affect the city. And I think districts is the reason you see actually people that have them to be sensitive to it, because some of the state organizations, their state level concerns. Yeah.
And we've had, the School Alliance is one we've been part of for a number of years. Just as a reminder, Lake Stevens, Everett, Lake Washington, Tahoma, Mercer Island, Issaquah. Am I missing anyone? I think those are the main ones. We're all on that, which has been our lobbyist group. I was surprised that the Issaquah on the list that you had discovered, because they're part of the alliance. So I don't know if they're coming up because of that, or if they have another lobbyist. I would have to ask our friends over there, but that has been that. Doesn't preclude the board from exploring that. Just contextually, that's been where we've been, and that's mainly staff working with it.
And I think we've got a number of legislative interests along with regionalization. Impact fees have been another recurring one. State subsidies or state help to do electrification or green schools or rebuilding of our schools. We receive very little state funding now, so it might be an interest to us for some changes there. So I think that there is a long list that we share an interest with the city. And then as growth and other things happen on the island, commensurate support for schools would also be useful. So I appreciate the potential tie in there that we might have greater affordances with the city than we might do with another school district. So, okay, thank you. Thank you for reading these there. Next item, announcements, and reports. Maggie Ty, any announcements?
Yes, this afternoon I attended the audit exit interview for our school district, and this is the state's annual audit of our finances for the previous year. And by which I don't mean the year ending like today. They were auditing us for September 2020 to the end of August 2021. So which you'll recall is like kind of still deep in the beginnings of the pandemic. So in general, the district was found to be, in compliance on all material respects, and that we had safeguarded our control of public resources. The one item that they pulled out as needing correction is that we need to strengthen our internal controls in terms of tracking the use of restricted funds for staff training. In particular, really, these were funds that were specified for social emotional instruction, like teaching the staff about social emotional learning. And like we had 5 days worth of instruction, and some of the records were missing of like who had attended the Zoom, that kind of thing. And so, just a reminder that we needed to have better internal controls. And I will say, having attended last year's exit interview conference, I don't think the year before, but that the person who was running it, who was, I think, the same person, I'm not the right person to ask about that, but that she was like very, very thankful to Matt for his help in kind of going through the audit process, and that she felt he'd been exceptionally like on top of things as a new finance director, and that he had seemed to have a very good grasp on like what needed to change going forward. So that was very positive. So that's it. That's my report.
Okay. Dan? Sam? Deborah?
Just attended the high school PAC meeting this morning, like I said, and really was, the big discussion was Islander hour, and then kind of counseling and services, meaning college, lots of questions.
And I attended the PTA council. They've had a number of projects underway around DEI. They've created some new affinity groups for gifted and twice exceptional students, as well as for Jewish students on Mercer Island. So we're making lots of progress around making sure everyone belongs. Fred communicated the issue around regionalization, and there was a great discussion around that, as well as an ability to activate PTA and mobilize the PTA groups around that. So I think that was great. Many parent edge parent edge programs that are coming up. So look in your email for that, and some good book authors and such from self-driven children and youth suicide and violence prevention that are coming to speak to the area in the next month or two. So with that, I'm done with PT, with my report. Anything else? So are we ready to? So I guess we are, now what we're going to do is recess into, that ends the meeting. We're going to recess into executive session. Our executive session will be how long? About 30 minutes. We will then return back to this meeting from executive session, where we will adjourn this meeting. No further business will take place, and there will be no further business of the executive session either to take place in public meeting. So we will adjourn immediately after our executive session. So with that, we will recess into executive session of 30 minutes.
Yes, we do. Okay. And we're back.
Okay, we're back in session, from our executive session, and with, there's no action taken during the executive session, no action will be taken now. And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn? And a second, and moved and seconded by Dan and Deborah, with all in favor? Aye. Against? None, so that's a 4-0 vote to adjourn, and with that, have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
And next week.
Okay.
Pardon?